Welcome to the Aeropedia Podcast. I'm Ashwin.
And I'm Peter. And for this episode, we have the pleasure of having Blake Emery, who's president of Blake Emery Associates. Blake is the research consultant to several international corporations and is also board member of All Wheels Up. Blake was the director of differentiation strategy for Boeing commercial airplanes, where he conducted research leading to many of the innovations on the 787 Dreamliner. He's also associated with the popular Boeing Sky Interior. So, Ashwin, what mental state are you in when you enter the cabin of an airplane?
Oh, Peter, most of the time I'm jet lagged before I get on the plane. So let's see how Blake can give us a solution for that. Blake, thanks for joining the Aeropedia Podcast. It's great to have you here. To start off, why don't you give us an overview of who you are and your background in the industry and how you've built up your expertise over these years?
Sure. So my background, what I studied in school was interpersonal psychology, which is kind of like the psychology of relationships. And I kind of started my career teaching that kind of stuff at the college level, also teaching research design at the college level. And at one point, I was teaching a workshop on team building that had some Boeing people as participants in the workshop, and kind of long story short, they asked me if I could come and teach for them because they had an education and training division that they thought I could play a role in. And so I thought that sounds like a good idea. I'll go work for Boeing for 3 years. That'll look good on my resume. Well, the 3 years multiplied tremendously. So that's how I first got connected with Boeing. But the first part of my career in Boeing really was not very connected to airplanes. It was more organization development type work and teaching, writing skills and public speaking and different things like that. Team building, negotiating, teaching courses like that. But then I started doing organizational development work on an airplane program. At that time, it was a Boeing 757-300. And, I always wanted to get closer to the airplanes. And so when I was working for a part of the company called the Boeing Center for Leadership and Learning, which was the precursor to the big leadership center we used to have in St. Louis. And I was working in that group, and an opportunity came up to be like an organization development psychologist on this really big airplane we were working on at one time called the 747-500X, 600X, which was Boeing's equivalent of the A380, which Boeing ended up not doing a big airplane like that, which worked out to my tremendous advantage, as it turns out. But anyway, I did go to work on that big airplane program, and so that's the thing that first got me definitely into airplane programs, and from there. When we stopped that program, I was kind of the organizational psychologist for a group called the Airplane Creation Process Strategy Team, which was looking to come up with a new way to develop and build the airplanes. And I really got, as part of that whole process, I got really, really interested in the whole concept of a differentiation strategy, and ended up getting a position as the director of differentiation strategy as I pursued that interest. So.
And then how did you get so deep into the cabin side of things, right? When did that happen, and how has your expertise just I feel like you're one of the most well-renowned experts in the industry on cabin today, right? So just walk us through that evolution a little bit.
Yeah, so the way that happened is I had the opportunity to lead some research around the world getting to understand the deep psychological meaning for people when they're in this experience that we call being inside an airplane. And there were, in going around the world and working with groups and getting real deep to understand the experience. And what we were looking for there, Ashwin, were really what we would call unarticulated needs that people, I mean, they have when they're inside the airplane, but they haven't necessarily articulated it. Because as it turns out, what people can articulate about what they want inside an airplane, you really can't learn that much from it. For example, if I would ask you guys, if you could improve one thing inside the airplane, what would you do?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you'll receive different answers from everybody, but I would say I would love more comfortable seats.
Yeah, and everybody says that. I mean, and they say it in different ways.
Window seat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody says some form of, well, I want more space. Okay. So the thing is, if you do all these questionnaires and you do all this research and you discover that people say they want more space, you've learned nothing, because the industry already decided how to handle that problem. The way the industry handles that problem is you can have all the space you need. You can have the most comfortable, all the comfort you want. You just got to pay for it, right? That's the economic reality of it. And so we needed, on this team, we needed to come up with ways to, we weren't going to necessarily be able to create more physical space. Of course, we were going to work to do everything we could to create more physical space. But in a sense, when you do that, you end up just chasing your tail, because quite frankly, anytime we would do anything that would create more space for the passenger, guess what? The airlines would fill that space with more seats, okay? And if you and I were running an airline, we'd do that too, because that's the revenue source. So what we had to do is come up with ways to do something to greatly improve the passenger experience from not only a physical standpoint, but even more so from a psychological standpoint. And I was very interested in that. Being my background was psychology and my background was research, it just fit with me personally. It fit very well. But I had to convince people to give me the position to work on the cabin, to work inside the cabin, because unfortunately, the industry kind of tends to look at the economy class cabin as just a commodity, and they only deal with it based on price. And so a lot of executives at the time didn't understand what I was doing, didn't understand the research I was doing, didn't even in those days understand the concept of a differentiation strategy. So that took a little work, and primarily the way that happened is the thing that really enabled that was I had built really good relationships with really key Boeing engineering leaders. Okay. And because of the trust that they had in me, I could use their credibility as a springboard, because I didn't have that much credibility in those days. But using those folks, I was able to get the position to work on the cabin. And then once people saw the kinds of designs, the kind of things, the kind of ideas we were coming up with, my credibility, for a lot of people, my credibility went up. It didn't go up for everyone, okay? So like, just to give you an example, in working on exterior shape or exterior appearance, aeronautical engineers tended to be okay with what I was trying to do, because there's a principle, if it looks good, it's going to fly good. But structural engineers weren't necessarily happy with me because they always thought everything I was going to do was going to add more weight. And they couldn't understand that a psychologist could appreciate the fact that the airplane's still got to make its mission. It's still got to achieve a certain kind of fuel burn, certain range, reach certain parameters. And of course, I was very aware of that. I know that you have to work within constraints. And at the same time, you have to discover what constraints are real. And sometimes you have to push the boundaries of those constraints that people even think are real, because they might not be. And how are you going to find out unless you push it a little bit?
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. So, how do you define how do you define a cabin, right? Because within a cabin, there's a lot more than just the seat, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
basically, the cabin is the floor, the sidewalls, the windows and the window reveals, the bins, the ceiling, plus systems like lighting and air circulation. And you would include the seats. However, at the time, for most of my time working on the cabin, we actually didn't think about the seats, because in those days, the company I worked for wasn't making seats, okay? And most of the airlines bought seats from another supplier. Now, the company I worked for is in the seat business, so that was a major change at one point.
And so has there been, because as a passenger, you just see, mainly you see the seats when nobody's focusing on the exit lights as much, and the bins are just, again, you're looking at them for like 30 seconds when you need your bag. So has there been the right amount of innovation in other areas other than the seats in the cabin?
Yeah, there's tremendous innovation, and you're probably, let's just say, what you just described is very different from the way I look at the cabin. Okay, so you say you maybe notice the bins for 30 seconds and then you don't. If you notice the bin for more than 30 seconds, I would say something's wrong. That's like you've got a picture in a frame and you're paying attention to the frame. Okay.
You're talking to AvGeeks though here, Blake. So we take an exorbitant amount of time looking at every detail of the cabin.
Yeah. Understood. But the thing is that the stuff I'm talking about is more how you're reacting on a subconscious level, and how that subconscious reaction is impacting you emotionally. Okay. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So, yeah, I mean, a really great example of that is when we were working on the bins on the 787. This one manager, we were working on we were specifically working on bin latches, and this one manager said to me, "Well, I want our bin latch to win an industrial design award," and I said, "No, we don't." Okay, I want people, when they're inside our airplane, I want them to feel better, to like it more, and they don't know why. I don't want them to know why. Now, I could tell from the very beginning that if people say, for example, are in a 787 and they know that they like it better, but they don't exactly know why, if they get queried about why, they will come up with an answer. And I was able to predict that what most people are going to say is they like the windows, because the windows were a very, very easy target, because they were a lot bigger. They were a different place in the fuselage. They had a different interaction with light coming in. And so my prediction was that people are going to say they like the 87 because of the windows. And that turned out to be true as far as what they said. I happen to know that isn't necessarily what the reason they like it better, but I know that's what they're going to report.
That's very interesting, Blake. And one thing I've asked some other guests of ours, when a new airplane comes out, you see some very interesting and differentiating, to your point, differentiating concepts of what new airplanes could be like. And in some cases in the past, they've turned into short-lived realities of the lounge on the 747 as an example, and that. But what leads to these extreme, grandiose concepts of the cabin when, all 99.9% of the time it turns into your standard cabin configuration, and that? What leads to those early images?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's so fascinating. And so first of all, the reason those grandiose ideas show up is because it is in fact something that people would like to see on their airplane. Okay, the problem is the way airline margins are so slim, so small, and it costs so much to put a commercial jet airplane into the sky that the value per square foot of a piece of floor on an airplane is tremendous. It's just tremendous. It's of a higher value by orders of magnitude than the most expensive real estate on planet Earth. Okay, doesn't even, if you made a chart of the most expensive real estate per square foot on Earth, the value per square foot of a commercial jet airplane is much higher. So if you think about that, but because the airline margins are so small, they got to pay pilots and crew and fuel and everything to run a huge business. They then can't afford to fly around, to fly around space that isn't revenue generating space. So that's kind of like reality. That's like gravity. Okay. But the cool designs that you see are kind of like what the human wants, and so you have to choose your approach by which you can you got to push the boundaries enough so that you capture people's imagination. Okay, a really good example is the exterior appearance of the 787. The initial exterior appearance of the 787, it had a very gentle crown curve like on a 747. It was very, very swoopy, lot of dorsal, just an amazingly beautiful shape. And the way it ended up was close to that, but not 100%. We got the key important features, but we didn't get everything. But how did we even get anything at all? Well, the strategy we used there, part of the strategy, it's not the only thing, but part of the strategy was we made large-scale models of that first beautiful, swoopy 787 Dreamliner. And we put them on the desks of 787 executives, and we put them on the desks of customers and potential customers. And it got to the point where people were pointing to that and saying, that's the goal. And I even had a guy from one airline who was in an interior mock-up one time where we had a model of the 787 on the outside, and he pointed to one particular feature and he said, you make sure that happens. So see, you capture people's imagination. See, if somebody sees something that's just too crazy and their first thought is too crazy, then they're against you from the beginning. But if they see it and their initial reaction is, wow, that's really cool, I wish we could do that, right? Then all of a sudden they're behind you. So it's a totally different interaction, totally different experience. But you got to think it through.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Boeing and the work you've done for them. So, can you explain to us your involvement with the Sky Interior and just talk us through that entire experience and how did that go from ideation to implementation?
Yeah, that was a really, really fascinating process. So the first thing we did was, the first thing in the process is you do a whole lot of qualitative research in order to get your bundle of ideas of things you could do. Understanding the unarticulated needs, understanding the unarticulated values. Okay, so that's a role that I played. And then I not I alone, of course, I had a whole team of people helping me out. And then and there's no way I could have done this alone, believe me. And then we worked with our industrial design partner, Teague, and upon sharing with them some of the unarticulated needs, some of the values, some of the things we wanted to achieve, they went to work on an ideation phase, a lot of sketching, a lot of ideas. We also ran a very, very interesting process at one time through our concept center, where we had, if I remember correctly, we had people kind of design the next new airplane from different perspectives. Okay, here it is from the passenger's perspective. Here it is from the airline's perspective. Here it is from the manufacturing perspective, for example. So we had three teams kind of in competition to see what people would come up with. And it was actually out of that competition that one of the sketches, one of the concepts, one of the interior concepts that came out of that was a concept where it didn't have the luggage bins the way they are today. Running the whole length of the cabin. It had divided kind of spaces. The cabin was divided into spaces, and part of the thing that created the division were large luggage bins at different parts in the cabin, and they were like puffy clouds. Okay, it was like puffy clouds in the sky, and that was actually the genesis of what became the bins that initially was initially designed for the 787. And while they were being worked on for the 787, an engineer came up with the name of Sky. We should call this Sky, which went over well. And the funny thing is, we also began working on the interior for the 737, a new interior for the 737, and it was inspired by the same research as the 87. A lot of people think, oh well, you just take the 87 and you stick that into the 37. It doesn't work that way. You have to kind of redesign the whole thing, but coming from the same principles and the same inspiration. And once we did it in the 737, that's when the label of the Boeing Sky Interior came out. And so a lot of people associate the Sky Interior with the 737, but the Sky Interior is really a set of principles that are applied to the airplane. It isn't necessarily a specific interior. It's a set of principles that are applied.
Thanks for walking us through that. That was learned some things on that journey. So thank you, Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one of the big learnings was the importance of being connected to the sky, for example. Okay, so you can imagine how if you've discovered from your research that passengers want to be connected to the sky, then you can see how that could influence your design decisions. Just as an example.
Yeah. In your experience working with the design and the psychology of it all, do you think there's anything that the airlines, in their efforts to maximize revenue and use every single inch, to your point, but coupled or juxtaposed the personal desires of things, do you think there's anything that the industry is missing or has kind of missed the mark on when it comes to cabin design and implementation?
Absolutely. I think the industry has missed a ton. I don't think the industry, okay, one example is these days they spend all their time trying to differentiate in the premium cabin. And what that means is the economy cabin gets pretty much ignored. I don't think there's been any important changes in economy class per se for the last 15 years. I don't think there's been anything, I think there've been tremendous improvements in in-flight connectivity, which is good, in-flight connectivity and entertainment, which is good. But for the most part, economy class, I believe, is ignored. One area where the airlines got a little bit better is they used to think their primary every airline to an airline used to think that their primary differentiation was their service. Everyone thought they had the best service, which is just like ridiculous, because some did have good service, but some of them that thought that they differentiated along service, their service sucked. Okay. Huge mistake the industry made. One of the biggest mistakes that impacted the passenger experience and had tremendous knock-on effects. A dumb mistake when they started charging for checked bags. When what the industry needed to do was charge for the bags you take on the airplane. So when they started charging for checked bags, what's the knock-on unintended consequences that happened? Well, first of all, they're addicted to the revenue. They can't go back, right? They need that money now. Secondly, hey, human behavior. People started carrying more stuff on board the airplane and bigger stuff on the airplane. Oh, guess what? Now we need bigger bins. So now Airbus, Boeing, Embraer, everyone's making bigger bins, okay? None of which did anything but make the passenger experience worse. You're taking away physical space from the passenger. There's more crap passengers are bringing on board. And if you're in the back of the airplane, just how happy are you as people are taking those huge things out of every bin in front of you and you just get to sit and wait? That was dumb. Sorry, industry, that was dumb. So those are a couple of areas that I still think the economy class passenger is being ignored by the industry. There's probably still ways to salvage themselves from that initial mistake, but it's going to be a lot harder now. Okay. I mean, if you let a problem, grow like that, it's still, I'll use the word solvable, but I'll put it in quotes, because the point I'm trying to make is once a problem grows, it just gets harder and harder to fix it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point, right? And yeah, who knows?
And just think how many people, if they actually watch this podcast, just think about how many people I just pissed off like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a lot
but hopefully inspire the next generation who's going to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You can hope so. Yeah.
And speaking of the next generation, Blake, I wanted to kind of end this session with there's so many folks out there that want to get into the cabin space, right? There's engineers, artists, there's problem solvers, there's new grads. So are there any key skills or any key certifications or courses that you would recommend to these young professionals to get more into the cabin side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they reflect my biases. I think in addition to whatever the discipline, your discipline of choice is, I think it would be good to take a class in sketching, so that you're able to draw your ideas a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, but a little bit. And of course, if you're going into industrial design, you probably got to be pretty good at it. I wouldn't know. I'm not an industrial designer by training. Definitely take some basic psychology classes. See what the latest lessons are from neuroscience also, and then behavioral economics. Those classes that are looking at economics, but not just looking at economics from economic standpoint, but their economic impacts on behavior.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, these are courses that don't necessarily, naturally jump out at folks, right? So it's great to hear from someone like you. So we're going to transition into some of the more rapid fire and skills-based questions with you. Can you name one hard skill and one soft skill that's required to succeed in some of your roles?
It depends on how you define hard and soft skill. And I think almost everything I had, most people would probably define as a soft skill. Really good listening. I guess the hard skill would be knowing research design, because that requires very specific knowledge and quite a bit of statistics to know how to set up good controlled experimental research. So I'd say hard skill, design of experiments, soft skill, listening.
Got it. What part of aviation do you feel is least understood by the general public, and what can they do to learn more?
The airline business. The whole economics of the airline business. What are their costs? What's their revenue stream? What are their union issues? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's quite deep. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Really hope every passenger could invest that amount of time and learn our industry better, but it's not the case. Okay.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. What's been your favorite flight leg experience from a, origin to destination? What cabin was it? What aircraft, airline, etc.?
There have been so many good ones.
Yeah, I'm asking you to pick from like 10,000 of.
Yeah, really. Okay. I'll tell you one. It'll probably blow your editing up because I'll try to make it as short as I can. I was flying from Seattle. I think my ultimate destination was Australia, but I had to go through Tokyo, and I was on ANA, business class on a 787. Beautiful, beautiful flight, beautiful, beautiful airplane. But I noticed in the lighting of the airplane, they never changed the lights. They always had this kind of pinkish above the bins, and it was really nice. It was really lovely. But, the whole reason we did what we did with the lights is that people could change them. You could have it something for takeoff and something for meal service and something for sleeping and something for landing. You can do a lot of stuff with the lights. Why aren't they doing stuff with the lights? So it was well before descent, but I talked to some flight attendant and I asked, well, why, how come you're not doing more with the lights? And so she had some higher ranking flight attendant talk to me and says, oh, you want us to change, anyway, she ended up kind of playing the language game, and like she didn't really understand something about changing the lights. And I give up. So I sat back down in my seat. About 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, They are sending a rainbow, multiple color rainbow, down the entire length of the cabin, okay? Which is one of the things you can do on if you want to, you can do it, And I looked at that and I thought, oh man, that's not what I meant, And then all of a sudden, guys, there's this cheering and clapping from economy class that you can hear over the entire airplane. They absolutely loved it. So I thought that was
They were doing the wave back there to match.
they were doing the wave, man. They were so excited. I've actually got some other stories like that, another story like that in Ireland, but you told me one, so that's the one we'll use.
Fair enough. Yeah, thanks for that experience. We're going to transition to the next part of the podcast. Peter, what is that?
That's right, Blake. This is your trivia round. Every episode, we ask our guest to 5 questions, trivia questions, to see your trivia knowledge and to hopefully at the end of the year name our trivia challenge champion. We haven't had anyone get all 5
I highly
right
doubt that I will be in the running for the champion.
That's not the spirit. No, you could be it. We haven't had anyone get 5, so this might be the first one. Let's see. All right, your first question. Airplane equipment. Airbus used a type of winglet called this on some versions of the A300, A310, and A320 families. Can you name?
Yeah, I recognize that, of course. Gosh, did they call that the gate? A gated winglet? A gated wingtip?
Close. No, it's the wingtip fence. You got the right
fence.
theme.
I knew it was something.
The right theme, but it is the wingtip fence, not the wingtip.
Okay. All right. I remember now. That's right.
All right. Next question. You might know this one. Can you name this airplane type by its tail section alone?
Yeah, it looks like a 37 to me.
Yep. Do you want to take a venture into what generation of 37 it is? Since you got it so quick.
I think that it's I think it was pre-NG would be my guess.
All right. Very good. You're correct. It's a 737-400. So and if we'd gone even further, the 200, 100 and 200 had even more distinct tail without the lead into the vertical stabilizer. But good job. All right.
And that lead-in is called the dorsal.
Dorsal. Thank you. Okay. We'll have to add that. That'll be the Blake question in the future. So any listeners we'll add that one. Dorsal. Okay. Okay, moving on to airports. This airport in Mexico was opened just in December of last year, 2023, and it's being served now by 10 airlines. Can you name the airport? Quite popular for leisure destination, seems, since its opening.
Oh shoot. I'm thinking it's a tourist destination like Puerto Vallarta, but it's not that. Yeah, I think I know which one it is, but I don't know the name. Sorry.
All right. It's on the Caribbean side, Tulum.
Oh no, I wouldn't have known that though.
So brand new airport opened up, and yep, a lot of the airlines from North America are starting service there.
Nice, good deal.
Yeah, up until Tulum Airport opened, you had to fly to Cancun and then drive down, which is I think an hour or 2 hour drive, right? So, and Tulum has a lot of resorts, so they instantly got a lot of demand once they opened the airport.
Nice.
All right, next question. Moving on to IATA codes. Can you name the IATA code ORY, Oscar Romeo Yankee?
Is that Orly?
Yes, indeed, it is. Good job. Paris Orly Airport. I thought I'd throw that in with the Olympics coming around. Although that's not the international airport for most folks, but Paris Orly Airport.
Yeah, that's
all
good.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Your last question, airlines. Can you name the airline utilizing this logo?
Well, I'll tell you, I love the logo. I absolutely love the logo, but I don't recognize it. I live in Renton and in Seattle, and I see all the 37s that go out with their logos on the tail and everything, and that's not one that's. I don't think that's an airline that uses 37s, because I would have known, I would have recognized, I would have seen that. It's beautiful.
I hate to break it to you, Blake, but they do fly 37s.
Oh, what is it?
And 76s and some Fokkers. Air New Guinea.
Oh,
The Papua New Guinea airline. So they don't have any new 37s, so I think many of them are leased. So maybe they've been painted after delivery.
Elsewhere, yeah. That's nice. It's a cool looking logo, and of course, so many airlines do use some kind of stylized bird. But that one's interesting. Yeah. I like that it's got multiple colors. So many airlines. I mean, it's got blue on the outside and gray seats. Come on, give me a break.
We like the one. You'll have to listen to one of our recent episodes. One of my favorite liveries was Uzbekistan Air. So
what, I get 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 or?
I think you got two. You got Orly and you got the 37.
I think you were pretty close with the fence stuff as well. Maybe
we'll give you a half a point.
Okay, that's good.
You're in the yard. You're in the yard.
You guys are so generous.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Blake, for
doing
the trivia, and thanks for joining us. This was a really fascinating.
It was fun. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. I hope you can edit that down to something that you guys can use.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll be able to. And thanks a lot, Blake. This was just so educational, right? And I hope our listeners find value. And we had a lot of fun, right? So we'll definitely have you on in the future and dive deeper into one of these awesome subjects, right? Because it's such an amazingly creative world out there with the cabin, and there's a lot going on the innovation side as well.
Sounds good. All right, thanks guys. Bye for now. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us this week. Send us any feedback, trivia ideas, or future topics you may have to our email at aeropedia.podcast@gmail.com. See you on the next leg of our journey.
Bye for now.
Returning heavy, contact departure 119.2, good night.
119.2, speed 290 heavy, good night.